moving into selling and dealing with that rejection, it was extremely difficult for me to deal with, and actually created enormous amounts of fear, anxiety, overwhelm, not enoughness, imposter syndrome. I mean, you name it, I had it. I did not realize how much harder it was going to be to sell myself. There are just things I need to be doing every single day to earn the right to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Like to earn the right to
Earn the
have
right.
my own business, to have this freedom. Like there are very specific inputs that I have to do for myself in order to earn that privilege. Just always, always remember what selling is. And at its most core essence, selling is being able to present your product or service as the solution to get the individual from where they are to where they want to be, in a way that makes the juice worth the squeeze.
Welcome to another episode of Founders Growth. My name is John Hill, aka Small Mountain. I'm the founder of Adapted Growth, and today we have Chris Caldwell on the show. Chris Caldwell is the founder of Sell As You Are, which is a sales coaching and training company, and one of my favorite people to interact with on LinkedIn. And I just have liked his content for so long that I kind of wanted him to be on here, but I was unsure. And then we started talking about his background, and his background is really, really cool. And it kind of shows that you don't have to start in sales to get good at sales. And this is important because since this is a show for founders, you might not have any sales background at all. And that doesn't have to be a reason not to try. So Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm super excited to have you here. Can we start with talking about what you were doing before you moved into this lane of like revenue and sales training and coaching?
Yeah, sure. So it's great to be on here. I'm excited for this conversation. I was a high school history and government teacher. I did that for 9 years. And so I did that in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then in Baltimore, Maryland. And I taught a lot of different courses. I coached 3 different sports, and most importantly, to me at least, I was fortunate enough to facilitate many of the retreats. And so it was an awesome career. And then in the summers, I would wait tables at a crab house in Baltimore to keep myself busy. So that's what I did for almost a decade before I left and got into sales.
What was there a day was like, I love that moment of the awareness, right? And
Yeah.
then we decide to go do something else. Were you burnt out as a teacher? Did someone kind of just place this in your lap? Or did you just wake up one day and you're like, hey, I like talking to people. I could probably go be in sales. Like, how did that work for you?
Yeah, I think it was a variety of things. I had started to get a little burned out from all of it, but that
Mhm.
wasn't as much due to the environment I was in as it was due to my own programming and how I was burning myself out. And
Oh,
so I started suffering my own self-inflicted burnout without realizing I was the creator of the burnout. So that was certainly part of it.
huh.
The second part of it was, financially, we were pregnant with our second child, and there was a very it was the reality of the situation was if I continued to teach, I was going to be losing money. Like it was
Mhm.
going to cost more money to send 2 of my kids to daycare than I would make. So I
Huh.
was literally going to lose money if I kept teaching. So I could stay at home with the kids, but I never felt called to that path. And then third is I wanted more freedom in my life, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
There is, while, yeah, you have summers off and you have a nice long break for the holidays, like there are very few jobs, professional jobs, that limit freedom as much as teaching does. When the bell would ring,
Huh.
I had to be in there and I had
Yeah.
to be doing something very specific for a set amount of time. And then when the bell, it's like I was a grown adult being run by a noise coming out of the ceiling. And after
Oh.
after a decade of that, I was just like, you know what? I want something in which I can have more freedom in my day, freedom with my creativity, with what I want to do. And there was a part of me that was always entrepreneurial. I started a couple businesses on the side
Mhm.
for fun at the time. And I wanted to work in a I wanted to work in a merit-based role. So after working for a decade in a standardized role, it didn't matter how good I was or how good I wasn't, I was getting paid the same. I wanted to try out a merit-based role. in which the better I was, the more money I would make. And so I just decided to go for it. I didn't know what I was doing when I quit my teaching job. I just quit my teaching job and figured I would
Whoa.
figure something out. So
So
yeah.
you weren't, so you're feeling this pressure, right? Second kid on the way, seeing that it's going to be costing you money to try to raise them and do it the right
hmm
way. And you just put in notice. You weren't like, okay, like maybe sales, like what was it even that clear? Or was it like, I just got to do something else and I don't know what it is, but I want to go try and I want to go like,
It yeah.
that's
I
fascinating.
just
Whoa.
quit. And so it was, it was coming up on that time. It was the spring season.
Uh-huh.
And so usually you want your teachers to put in notice by like March, February, March, that they're not coming back. So I sprung it on them a little bit, but around the April, May time frame, I told them that, I wasn't going to come back. And it was really shocking to everyone because I loved teaching. I loved the boys. It was an all boys school. I
Uh-huh.
loved I loved everything about it. And at least on the surface from what people saw. So it was really surprising to many. But yeah, I just quit. And I just figured if I'll find a job doing something. And from there I can learn. And so I just wanted to find where can I go where I can learn the most. And that was like my North Star
Yeah.
in the job search.
Fascinating transition. Okay.
Mhm.
So, uh, where did you go? Like where was that
Yeah.
first sales role?
Yeah. So my first sales role was at Sandler Training. So I was
Wild.
hired to do outbound and to sell people
Hmm.
into the training programs that my colleagues would then run the training programs.
Yeah.
So I was for, a period of time, just a full blown outbound seller for Sandler
Hmm.
Training, the office in Towson, Maryland, which is right down the road from the international HQ.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So yeah, because David Sandler's from Baltimore.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
um, yeah, so that was my first job, and it was between that and Dale Carnegie Training had also offered me a job to do a dual track selling and learning how to be a Dale Carnegie trainer,
Whoa.
and going back to that idea of freedom, the Sandler opportunity offered me more freedom.
Uh-huh.
And there was also a gentleman there who worked there who said he would be my mentor if I chose to work there. And he was David Sandler's fifth employee. And so
Who
he
was it?
had been a guy named Rush Burkhart. And so
Okay.
he's the one, he actually invented the upfront contract with David Sandler way back in the
Wild.
day. Yeah, very cool, right?
That's
And
crazy.
so he told me that if I worked there, he would teach me everything he knew. And he was partially retired and just had a book of business that he was managing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, hell yeah, let's do it.
I what a cool what a I did not I know a lot of Sandler trainers. I spent a lot of time in that framework as well. Um, did not know that though.
Yeah.
That's flooring. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, interesting. So what I would like to talk about for just a second, right? I'm obsessed with overlap, right? So I'm curious
hmm
when you started there and you're just doing outbound and you're trying to figure it out and everything, what helped you from your teaching background? Or did anything map over that helped you in those early days? Because in the beginning, there's blind spots and fear and rejection and all these things that are
Sure.
tied to our personality and our self-limiting beliefs and everything. Did anything help from your teaching background or coaching background in those early days? Because people don't talk about it, but it's a lot to push through that initial phase and to get really honest with yourself.
Yeah. I think that I had a few things working for me, but many more things working against me. One of the few things I had working for me was time blocking.
Mm,
Because I, growing up, or not growing up, but like the first decade of my career, I was a teacher in which everything was time blocked. And so,
whoa.
and,
I never thought about
it's
it like
like,
that.
well, my classes were 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock it's like I didn't have a choice. I had to be in there. And so that was helpful in that I had built up that discipline of going into the classroom and teaching, even when I didn't feel like it, or when I
Uh-huh.
was really tired, or when I just didn't have it that day. And so that built up like a callus in me to be able to go do it even when I didn't feel like it. So that was helpful.
Huh.
But I mean, if I can be honest with you, my 10 years teaching set me up for immense amounts of failure in sales. Personally, this is just my personal experience with it.
What do you
And
mean
that's
by that?
because I had an enormous need for approval, to be liked,
Oh.
to be accepted, to be seen and heard, to feel like I belonged, to feel significant, like all these different, human needs.
Hmm.
I had them very strong in my wiring, which is probably one of the reasons I chose to be a teacher in the first place.
Yeah.
That was a place in which for 10 years, while the paychecks weren't huge, I was getting my emotional needs met in a wonderful way.
Oh yeah.
And then moving into selling and doing 100 to 150 cold calls every day and dealing with that rejection was so dramatically 180 degrees
Hmm.
from what I've been doing for the last decade that it was extremely difficult for me to deal with, and actually created enormous amounts of fear, anxiety,
Yeah.
overwhelm, not enoughness, imposter syndrome. I mean, you name it, I had it. And it was very, very hard for me.
I mean, I had all that in the role before I got to work with my business partner. It was my
Mm,
first field role, and I was selling to surgeons, and I didn't even have a big enough market to where I could really even go for the no, or do any of these mantras that are so popular and everything. And I was just so fearful and nervous, and I would pull up in
mhm.
front of like offices and like not even have the resilience to walk in, right? I'd be like changing the apps on my home screen and stuff like this,
Yep,
right?
I
And
feel
and
that.
it feels really justified right there in the moment, like I mean, and that's why avoidance is such a dangerous thing, right? And procrastination are such dangerous things. Um, okay, so when you're in there and you're
Mhm.
grinding and you have this mentor, and Sandler, I think, has a lot of value for a lot of people. Where did you have a moment to where you're like, I got it? Like, I'm gonna be okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. It started, I think, when I was able to consistently make the calls, no matter how I felt.
Yeah.
That's when I realized I was going to be okay. And then I closed a couple deals and brought in a couple clients, and I was full commission. So it's
Mhm.
like, having, as I mentioned, my wife was pregnant with our second, so she was quitting her job. And so I was a
Whoa.
teacher. I had no savings. I hadn't been making any money. So
Mhm.
it really, there was an immense amount of pressure. But after I closed my first couple clients and got them in and started seeing their results, and how much they were loving it, that's when I began to realize, like, okay, like, yeah, I can do this. And really, it took it to another level when I was able to get up in front of the room and start doing the training. Because teaching is my gift. That's my thing. That's what I
Yeah.
love to do. I had my Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours. And so I was unique in that, there aren't a lot of sales trainers who have a master's in pedagogy. And I just so, in fact, did.
Mhm.
And so that was like, once I got up in front of the room and could be a teacher again, then I started to feel much more confident that, like, okay, yeah, I got this. I can do this.
Yeah. My Sandler coach had all the struggles with trying to bring on people onto his team and stuff like this, right? And people wanting to come in, not really develop themselves as salespeople, but just show up as the coach and the teacher,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work, right? Like
No.
if you don't know the territory, everyone knows, right? And when your
Mhm.
only advice is just do more, people run out of that pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so when you are okay, so you're going through this and you're commission only, which is
Yeah.
crazy to think about, right? How long did it take you to hit that point of, you're back in front of the thing. And I think there's a cool thing if you want to do delivery, right? I think it kind of brings us up to the tier of, most people aren't cut out to just be pure salespeople selling other people's stuff and things like that. But I think
Mhm.
founders can find a way to summon the will to go do uncomfortable stuff because it's kind
Yeah.
of their baby and everything. How long did it take you to get to that place to where you were back in front of the room and you kind of felt like you were selling a thing that you could kind of deliver on?
Probably about 6 months.
6 months, dude.
Yeah, I
That's
would say
not that long in the grand scheme of
yeah.
things. Like I've met
Yeah.
a lot of Sandler trainers who, battled harder for longer and
Sure.
took longer to get
Sure.
success. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I had a couple things going for me. What I mentioned earlier is that I had this career in teaching. So, like, getting up in front of the room, like, coming up with the lesson plan for the foundations class or the sales mastery class,
Mhm.
like that was like, great, let's do it. Like,
Mhm.
let me get in the lab and put something together. It will be great. So that I just had that. And then the mentor that, that I worked with, I worked with him. I probably talked to him for 1 to 2 hours every single day. And so, I was just literally in his office, just asking him question after question after question after question. And he was just telling me everything he knew. And so I just, I was able, it's like the Karate Kid and Mr. Miyagi,
Mhm.
right? It's like I was able to catch up and surpass so many other people that I like came into the business with. Like I was just
Same.
miles ahead of them 6 months in because I had 300 hours of one-on-one mentorship with someone who had been doing it for 35 years and shared an office with David Sandler for 5 years. So it was like I was getting the transmission right from Sandler through Rush. So that was hugely beneficial. And I
Yeah.
give myself credit for being so open to it and being so interested in it, but
Mhm.
obviously the credit would go to Rush for all the time he spent with me.
My coach would always do this thing, and he would say, "Well, guys, if you need anything, I'm here." Right? And
Mhm.
it would, because of my background of like training in martial arts and everything, I have zero problem monopolizing anybody's time who's willing to give it to me. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And kind of similar to you, when there's knowledge that I want, it's just better for everybody involved if you just give it to me. Like, don't hold it
Mhm.
away. Don't try to linchpin me or anything else like that. Just give it to me because I'm gonna go figure it out.
Yep.
And so I start doing the same thing, right? I'm like, okay, I'll spend an hour after class. I'll take you to lunch. I'll bring you a
Mhm.
coffee early. I'll show up early and everything. And kind of that same thing, right? There were people who had been in that class for, I mean, a long time, and then all of a sudden they're like, man, John, you got notes? And I was like, well, yeah, you're not taking notes? Like, nah, I'm just gonna take the lesson learned at the end of this thing. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Um, so fast forwarding, okay, so yeah, because I think we could talk about Sandler and like great
Sure.
mentorship for I mean probably a couple of days.
Mhm.
Let's talk about you going out on your own.
Sure.
So what were you doing? Were you still with Sandler before you opened Sell As You
So
Are?
so I left Sandler and I was a VP of sales for 3 years.
Oh,
And
okay, cool.
so, I had non-compete with Sandler as all trainers do.
Hmm.
So like that, I couldn't just go out off on my own.
Hmm.
And to be honest with you, I had ideas of what types of changes, updates, or adjustments I would make, like how I would create my system and my process and the
Hmm.
language I used. And um, you know, through that, the anxiety and the overwhelm and
Mm,
everything I felt the early on, I really leaned into personal development, psychology, spirituality, human communication, etc. And so I was just learning so much outside
mm,
of the Sandler stuff that I wanted to bring in. Like I really wanted to help create a confluence of the being and the doing. And so, but first I wanted to try it. I wanted to see if it worked, like if it would actually work on a sales team, like if the things that I really believe will work would actually work. And so I took a VP role in which I led a team at a company up in Baltimore, and I did that for a few years, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what I thought would work, whether it worked or not, and why it did or why it didn't. I learned a lot about leadership. I learned a lot about managing people. I learned a lot about myself.
mm.
And so after a few years of that, then I felt like fully ready to go off on my own and that, whoever decided to work with me, I would be able to bring the solution that they really needed. Not just based off like conceptual understanding, but real life application.
I'm floored at the thinking of I want to go test the metal, right? I want to go
Nice.
see how different this is, how unique it is, like, and then what works and what doesn't work, right? Because,
Yeah,
you know, I tried to do a similar kind of path, right? Because whenever I was going through Sandler and working with my coach, I was working with a business partner, and we're doing affordable websites, and I'm learning about the sell on the basis of like solutions and problems, gaps, and challenges, and all of that other stuff.
sure.
And uh, when I launched this business, it wasn't to be a sales coach or trainer. It was just to build CRMs for people because I
Mm,
knew these really great trainers, right, that I had been like learning from and everything. And I had head trash of like, is my stuff really any different, right? Because I knew there was a bunch of stuff I wouldn't use that I was hearing from from certain Sandler trainers that I just
sure.
was like, nope, not doing that, not doing that, not doing that.
Yep.
So like I'd for, kind of built my philosophy a little bit, but it was still very much around the idea of like, I'm not a hunter. Everyone is once hunters, right? So this is just how I'm going to sell.
Mhm.
And then in the pandemic, someone was like, "Well, can you teach someone to sell the way that you sell?" And I have this moment of like, "You don't want me to teach your people. I'm not a hunter type and everything, you know."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Well, I've just really appreciated this conversation. I would like this if you can do this." And
Mm.
it was a super surreal moment because
Yeah.
I was seeing friction with the CRM thinking and some of the builds that I was doing because it your CRM is tied to your philosophy if you're actually the one building it. Now you can hire a really great systems admin to go build your CRM for you, but it's probably not going to be attached to the reality and the vernacular that you're using as you're going about trying to get, your work done and everything. And so I just wanted to build a CRM because that was the feedback loop that I couldn't lie to myself anymore, right? It forced me to get coachable.
Mhm.
But it it took me a long time. I had different head trash around that whole thing because it was less about I think my stuff is different, but it was like nobody wants this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Um I love that idea of going out and proving it.
Yeah.
What did you think that was going to work that just categorically didn't? Like is there anything top of mind for you that you were like, "Oh, I'm going to be different in this way," and then you do it and it just catastrophically blows up in your face? Do you have anything like that?
I'm trying to think. I think that there were a couple different areas of the sales process that I had been taught should be non-negotiable. And I
Oh.
actually felt like they can be really negotiable. And I can water them down and they don't have to be as non-negotiable. Um and that did not work.
Uh-huh.
Like, the things I was taught should be non-negotiable really are non-negotiable.
Uh-huh.
And so that is actually what I found out is that by weakening the process and by watering it down and by really teaching something that, like, my sales team actually, like, wanted, like, the part of them that was scared of really being in their power and making people uncomfortable was like, "Yeah, no, let's water this down. That's a great point."
Uh-huh.
uh, by giving them permission to do that, I was actually not helping them at all, and creating just too much gray area. And so, yeah, that I think is what I learned more than anything else. And I was reminded of a lot of things that I just didn't feel like had to be so, like, I'm not a black or white guy. Like, I live in the gray area and my relationships are often exist there. And so I felt like that I'll just bring more gray area, more nuance to it.
Uh-huh.
And I actually made it leaky and made it weak in many ways.
I don't even know how to respond to that comment, man, if I can be really honest, because uh my path is so mirrored to that, but so completely different because I was always
Mm,
feeling friction because I am a black or white guy. Like I'm a C on
mm,
disc. I'm much more of an engineer than I am
okay.
actually
Yeah,
a
I'm an I.
salesperson. I mean, yeah. And honestly, my sales trainer told my business partner, like, hey, maybe not John for the sales partner,
Mm,
inside of the company. And I whenever he showed me disc and my results and everything, I just had this moment of like, oh, I just need to go find people who were similar to me and stop trying to learn from people who don't have a manner with which to convey the information to me in a way that is helpful, right?
yep.
Because busy work is like the bane of my existence. Like it always has
Mhm.
been. You talked, we were talking before the recording about serving. I was a server for a long time and like running duties and side work. Oh, I hated it. I hated it,
Yeah, me too.
and, led to some struggles in early sales roles until like you really just kind of develop the discipline and habits so that way you can get it done the right way.
Mhm.
Th- Um, and so for anything, I've had to get more into like more into that gray area of not being as rigid and things like that because especially for this thing that I do now, I don't want, I do not work with anybody by force. right? So I'm not going to
Mhm.
make big promises. You have to want the development of this whole thing, not just the outcome of it, because otherwise we're not going to be aligned. You won't make the
Yeah.
changes, stuff like that. And so I've had to get way more just okay with like, hey, you say this is a big deal, but maybe not, and that like kind of disconnecting from the outcome, right? Because with it being very
Mhm.
black or white, as soon as I put it into a box, I'm making all these assumptions that, get in my way and stuff. So I've had to go the other way, which is just interesting. So,
Mm.
but makes sense looking at the personalities, right? I versus C, we're kind of on the opposite angles.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I also think that that allowed me to then adopt a yes and. In recognizing that, like, okay, these things are non-negotiable, but let's talk about like the energy of it that should be non-negotiable,
Mhm.
not necessarily the exact words or the exact phrasing, but like let's talk about what are the energetic boundaries we're trying to create here, and
Yeah.
then how does each member of my team manifest and express those boundaries in their own way. And that's what I tried to do at Faya. We have like very specific non-negotiables, but
Mhm.
those are more like these are boundaries that you should set in your process, and
Yeah.
it's going to look and sound a little bit different for everyone, but the boundary is the same.
Oh man, I have to tell people, you don't try to sound like me, right? And sometimes like when you're really good at like coaching and teaching, right, you can just drop in a role play and well, here's a question, here's a way you could pose that, here's a
Mhm.
talk track, and then people are like, can you say that again? And it's like, don't take the wrong note here. I'm not telling you what to say. You need to find a way to convey this as yourself
Yeah.
because there's a handful of things from my business partner that are beautiful conversational, levers, right?
Mhm.
And I can't use them because I just hear his big dumb voice in my head the entire time, and I just feel fraudulent, right? And so
Sure.
talk about this idea that like you really need to own your messaging, right? It can't just be
Yep.
empty technique. It
Yep.
has to be intentional. And I think that not to get too much in the weeds or anything else like that, but I think that that's kind of one of the gaps inside of Sandler is they're giving out all this technique, but there's no real ownership of it. There's not taught how to use it, so a lot of it kind of becomes like kind of crutches for people.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you understand the why and the how, the what becomes so much easier. And that is really, my decade of coaching sports taught me that.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to coach teenagers how to do something like
Oh.
they can understand why they should do it that way and specifically how to do it,
Hmm.
then they'll do it. But
Yeah.
if you just tell them what to do, then they don't understand why it's actually in their best interest to do it, then they won't because the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? And
100%.
so the more I think the thing that makes me the most effective as a sales trainer with my clients is being able to help them understand this is the pattern you are in and this is exactly how you're causing your own suffering. And this
Oh
is
yeah.
why you're doing it from a psychological perspective. Like these are the needs you're trying to get met. This is how you're giving your power away, and this is how you're sabotaging yourself. And then when you can communicate that to them, then they're like, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
And it's like, "Yes, now let me show you how to behave out of that." What would it be
Yes.
like if you didn't do that? What would it be like if you were in control, if it was more predictable, if you could be more present and authentic with people? Oh my God. And then now they're enrolling themselves into a different way of doing it. And
100%.
then from there, I just tell them what to do and they do it.
Yeah, but one of my favorite lines is when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right?
Yep.
And there's a whole backside of that line, but we're just going to keep it to the part that's super popular.
Sure.
And it was so funny because like teaching martial arts before any of this stuff, that's actually where I met my business partner and my first field sales boss was in a martial arts school. And
Mm,
we would have these conversations of like, don't try to go too deep because if you try to go too deep too early, they're not going to hear it. And then it's just endless. Well, you don't get it, or in my old school, or, all this other stuff, all the avoidance kind of tracks and everything that happens.
yeah.
And so it was interesting coming into this and working with my coach and learning about avoidance. And just because I have a reason doesn't make it a good one, and
Hmm.
all of that beautiful, beautiful stuff, right? If you're working with like a really great trainer, right? They should be getting deep with you because
Yeah.
the tactics alone aren't going to make you do the hard things willingly and
Yeah.
consistently.
Hmm.
So going forward, right? You go into this role, you're working with the team, you're testing your ideas, things are working, right? You're seeing improvement and iterating on this thing. Can you talk a little bit about the decision to leave that team and to go out and launch Sell As You Are? What happened there?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I did it during COVID, which is not ideal.
Oh.
So right as no one had budget for anything, and I mean, I knew what I was getting myself into. No victimhood here. Like I knew, but I was just ready.
Yeah.
And so I had a conversation with a guy named Justin, who's my boss in my corporate role, and I let him know that this is what I wanted to do. And when I interviewed for that job, I told them, I said, I have a 1 year non-compete. If you hire me, you have me for 1 year, and I will give you everything I got while I'm here. And if I really like it, I might stay longer. And I ended up staying for 3. So it wasn't a shock to him when I told him I was ready to go off, but
Mhm.
so I was able to continue to work with them, and they became a client.
That's great.
And then I had some people from my days in Sandler, who had told me that they were waiting for me to start my own thing, so we
That's
could work
nice.
together, and which was really cool. And so I reached out to them, and the rest is history from there. And I was able to bring on some critical members to my team to help me build out the content, the design, the branding, the website, the online course, like all of those things. And so a woman named Kate Berry, who's been like just insanely valuable in my business, just a true creative genius. And I just gave her free reign for years in my business. And so my job is to coach, to train, to be the one coming up with content and putting the curriculum together.
Uh-huh.
I've recruited Rush over, my mentor, to work with me, and so he
Wow.
helps on the corporate side of things and with strategy and keeping my head on straight sometimes. And so it's been really a lot of fun, really hard,
Yeah.
really
Very tough.
hard, way harder than I thought it would be, but that's
Yep.
classic because I have a real arrogance to me, so that
Mhm.
lines up well. So it's way harder than I thought it would be, and it's been beautiful, and it's been everything I could have asked for, and
Mhm.
who knows what the next 5 years will hold.
Oh man, what a cool story. And that kind of leads me to my next question, because we do have this background, right?
Sure.
We've been putting ourselves out there doing hard things, challenging ourselves, doing the thing. Well, this is just the next thing, and we have this background, so like it can't be that hard, right?
Sure.
And then that's honestly why the show exists, because you can be good at it. That ain't
Yeah.
nearly enough to like find success as a founder, like trying to launch your own thing. Where did that show up for you the most, launching Sell As You Are? Like what thing did just blindsided you that you didn't think you were gonna run into?
I did not realize how much harder it was going to be to sell myself.
Mm,
And even when I worked at Sandler, I sold myself. I was the trainer that they were hiring. Like I would be the point person, but
mhm,
I had the brand behind me. I
yeah,
had the largest sales training organization in the world behind me. I had everything behind me.
uh-huh,
And when I went off on my own, and as you can tell by my background, it was a very unconventional background for sales trainers. So when I went off on my own, people really challenged me and they really asked me questions and they were really skeptical. And that really just reflected, it was very hard for me because it reflected these parts of me that doubted myself
yeah,
and who I would often push down and not give voice to, as the pattern that I developed in my life to find quote unquote success. And so when those other people would speak the things that part of me was actually trying to say,
uh-huh,
it would amplify it, and it would make it very difficult for me. And so as I'm doing all of this, I'm also going through like my own awakening and my own spiritual evolution in which I'm learning so much about myself and going very deep in those practices. So it was just a lot for me to handle.
yeah,
Um, and so that was the hardest part.
interesting. I'm curious, you talked about when you were the VP of sales, you were testing
Mhm.
some ideas and you had to change some of your thinking. Did anything change during that time that maybe you had hard opinions on, or you'd been coached or trained, or maybe just, I'm not going to do it that way, I'm going to try it this way? Did anything change in that season of like trying to get comfortable selling yourself with your own brand and your own thing?
Well, I think in that season, what was really reinforced to me was the importance of doing the basic blocking and the tackling, like
Yeah.
making the calls, doing the behaviors. At Sandler, that was something I always tried to creatively avoid or justify my way out of.
Hmm.
But after I worked with enough sales professionals in which when they were on track and doing that, they would get one result, and when they weren't, they wouldn't. It became just non-negotiable for me. So
Yep.
um, I had a rule at my corporate job that, what I would tell them is I said, you get paid two incomes. Your salary and your benefits is the income we pay you for showing up and doing your job
Yeah. Bare
and
minimum.
executing on your scorecard, doing your behaviors, logging everything in the CRM, showing up on time, being a professional, right? Everything else.
Hmm.
Your commission is what you get paid for doing it really well. And it's like, and so if you would like to not show up and do these behaviors, then you can give your paycheck back because like that's literally why you're getting the
Yeah.
paycheck. And so I was able to carry that over, even though I didn't have two incomes when I started my business. I didn't have a salary
100%.
and health benefits, but I was able to carry that over, recognizing that like there are just things I need to be doing every single day to earn the right to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Like to earn the right to
Earn the
have
right.
my own business, to have this freedom to be able to go hang out with my kids for an hour in the middle of the day, like to
Yep.
show up, work when I want, log off when I want. Like there are very specific inputs that I have to do for myself in order to earn that privilege. And so that was really helpful.
Yeah, man. It's funny. I'm a big Jocko Willink fan, and I've read Extreme Ownership,
Hmm.
and that discipline equals freedom thing is
Oh, yeah.
is that is that same thing. For
Yep.
me, and how I got to there. That's fascinating. Jumping ahead a little bit, when you think about how you train now
Hmm.
versus the other training that you've done, the leadership that you have performed when you were the VP of sales. What have you changed your mind on the most about as a trainer now selling your own thing?
I don't know if it's changed my mind as much as I've realized things that
Okay.
I just wasn't aware of before. I think for me, what has been some things I have realized is how important the art of attunement is
Hmm.
in sales, like
Okay.
really attuning to the individual you're talking to,
Mm.
um, really understanding them, showing up in a selfless way in that moment in order to help them in a win-win scenario.
Uh-huh.
So that's been a really big one for me. The second one, which is actually a step in my process, is ascertaining their level of commitment.
Uh.
Like, how committed are they to really solving the problem? Came from a talk from a Buddhist teacher named Alan Watts,
Oh,
who,
big Watts
you know,
fan.
yeah, and he was giving a speech in England, and he said, if I tried to charge for a Dharma talk in the East, they would like ridicule me, like they would flay me, like this wouldn't work. He said in the East they don't charge money; they just make you wait outside all day long. He said in the West the the energy of commitment is expressed through what you're willing to pay.
100%.
And so like that hit me and I was like, you know what? Before I have any conversation about people's budgets, I need to ask them on a scale of 1 to 10 how committed they are to solving the problem. And
Yeah.
that question changed everything for me because I thought people I talked to, they're in so much pain, they got to be a 10 out of 10. And I'd ask and they'd be like,
Yeah.
I'm a 3.
Mhm.
And vice versa. I'm like, this guy doesn't even seem like he cares. I'm like, how committed are you to solving this problem? He's like, oh, a 10. It's driving me insane. It's
Yep.
like, okay, are you really? And so that that's been a really big one for me. So really the power of attuning to people um and the importance of gathering commitment have been critically important. And then really reinforcing to me that I do not give presentations or talk through in detail my plan for someone unless they're ready, unless they have told me what the next step is going to be. It
Yep.
doesn't have to be a decision in that moment because a lot of times there are just too many decision makers involved. But
Mhm.
I have to know if everything works out well, what are we going to do from there? And then I get that on the calendar too. So being able to, being able to maintain control after that point in the process has been, those are three huge things I focus on.
Man, I love that. The the part of you were saying there's this line in Kung Fu that like the student who won't spend a year in the horse stance is not really a student, and it's
Yep.
around the idea that like you got to have those foundations and you have to be willing to do the hard parts, right? The thousand punches
Mm-hmm.
to try to get 10 that are okay and stuff like that. And so,
Yep.
man, that, woof, like thankfully I already had some of that coming into sales.
Mm-hmm.
And I think really what I needed most specifically was room to bring that same kind of thinking, but also working with someone that kind of took it to that level, right? Actually had a curriculum, actually had, not just like, okay, watch me and do what I do, which is just
Yep.
like, oh, I
Yeah.
mean, whew, that makes me nervous now. And
Sure.
so,
Sure.
um, oh my gosh, I'm floored at that response. That made me lose my next question, but
Well,
that's
I had,
great.
I had a transition in teaching at one point that really taught me a lot. And that transition was the first year I taught an advanced placement course. And
Oh,
because at the end of, and I ended up teaching it quite a few by the time I was done. But
mhm.
that first year, I recognized at the end of the year, they would take a test and there would actually be objective measurement of how effective I was as a teacher. And I
Did that make you
learned
nervous? Did that, like, put stakes on you, or was it like, "Let's go, I'm gonna smash this"?
more the well, I like I said, I have quite some arrogance to me, so more the latter than the former. But I was also scared. Like there's one part of me that was like, I can totally do this, and another part of me that was really scared.
Mhm.
But what I learned that year was that I'm not there to teach, I'm there to help someone learn. And those are two dramatically different things to potentially. Sometimes it's the same thing, but other times it's two dramatically different things. And so it didn't matter how good of a quote teacher I was, how well I presented the material. If they didn't learn it, I would be exposed on the test that they didn't learn it. So for me, I think that like that's one thing I learned working in-house when I was directly responsible for the revenue these individuals were bringing in,
Mhm.
is that, when I was a Sandler trainer, I could just get up in front of the room. They'd be like, man, that
Oh,
sounded
yeah.
great. Like you nailed it. Great job. And I'd be like, yeah, thanks. Right. But once my role was responsible for whether they were actually learning it, I became much more nuanced and much more skilled at meeting them where they were and teaching it in a way that they could learn it.
Oh my
And
gosh,
so
man.
that's been really helpful for me. It fell as you are, but just bringing that humility to it of like, my colleague Kate, who I mentioned, is always like, when they're not learning it, the first thing we ask is, okay, how could we be communicating this better? Like they're not getting it. So if
Yeah.
they're not getting it, it doesn't matter how good we think we are, they're not getting it. And so they're not going to change. We need to change to figure out
Mhm.
how we can help them get it. And so I
Oh,
think that's been
man.
a big key for me.
I that hits me so hard, like, square in my chest, right? Because before we turned on the recording, we were talking about one of my favorite books, and, most people have never even heard of this book, but The Inner Game of Tennis, right? We were
Hmm.
kinda nerding out about it.
Yep.
Um, Everyone should go read this book. But I read that book. I was already an instructor in Kung Fu, and I'd had a
Mm.
couple of conversations because I was the guy who was like taking it super deep, and I was explaining, over explaining, and look how smart I am, and getting my needs met as a
Mhm.
coach and a teacher of Kung Fu.
Sure.
And then one time, my Sifu, my teacher, he pulls me off to the side and he goes, "Hey, how many different exercises or techniques did you work on with this person?" I was like, "Oh God, just two. They're rough," you know. And he goes, "Okay, why only two?" And I was like, "Because he's not good. You're not
Mhm.
good at this stuff yet. My job is to make them good." And he asked me this question, and it just like, whoa, blew me out of my body. He goes, "Good at whose level? Because if you're an instructor, your version of good should be astronomically different than their level of good.
Yeah.
You're not trying to make them your level of good as a
Yep.
brand new, fledgling student on this path and everything, right? Get a couple of conversation or get a couple of reps and then move on, move on,
Mhm.
move on." And it wasn't until I read Enter Game of Tennis that because like I was like, okay, Sifu, for sure I'm gonna change. But habits and pattern and precedent, these things run pretty deeply in all of us. And then reading that book, I was like, I'm still doing that. I'm still doing
Mm.
that a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
So, fascinating to hear that kind of thinking over there because I still do it a little bit now, right? Because, you know, we kind of fall into the things we're excited to teach and train and talk about and the stuff that we sometimes forget. You know, we call it the cursed knowledge that you forget that you even have to talk about the things that were easy for you because they might not be easy for somebody else. Um, but yeah, overcoaching because of like needing to get my needs met and like how smart I am and everything. Oh, that's a big, big, big well.
Mm.
Changing topics, Chris, because I want to be super respectful of your time, and this has been a really cool
Sure.
conversation. I think we could probably talk for about 6 weeks and just bore everyone to tears who doesn't really love cells yet. When you think about your company now,
Mhm.
I'm curious, right? There's so much sales advice online. You know, there's so much dogma, and I love how you're always trying to go in and give some perspective about not being as hard edged. You know, like
Mhm.
sometimes discounting makes sense. Sometimes calling it over make. You know, you're
Yeah.
always a voice of reason in the comments. I'm curious, what is the lesson that you see now, right? The tweet, the social media post that when you see it now, you're like, yep, but you couldn't appreciate it until you had to learn the lesson the hard way.
Yeah. I would say, you've referenced martial arts a few times. I have a T-shirt with Mr. Miyagi, and it's wax on, wax off. Like master the fundamentals.
Mm,
Like absolutely master the fundamentals. There's a great story of a basketball camp coach, or a guy who ran a basketball camp for kids. He went to Kobe Bryant's camp and to learn from Kobe on like how to run camps. And
mhm,
he asked Kobe one time, he said, "Hey, can I watch you work out?" And Kobe's like, "Yeah, sure. Come at 5 a.m." And he was like, "Okay, I'll be there." And, of course, Kobe works out for 3 hours and then runs a camp all day in the off season.
mhm.
So he shows up, he watches Kobe work out. Kobe finishes dripping in sweat. They're both walking out of the court. And the guy said, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And he said, "You're the best basketball player in the world right now. And you just spent 45 minutes doing footwork drills that I teach to 10-year-olds. Like, what gives?"
Mhm.
And Kobe just looked at him and said, "Why the heck do you think I'm the best basketball player in the world?"
Yeah, man.
And
Yeah.
it's like, it's that. It's that. Like, the biggest blind spot I see with my clients is their unwillingness to humble themselves to master the fundamentals of what I'm teaching them. And so sometimes they get their hungry ghost and they're like, "Can we get new stuff? Can we get new stuff?"
Mhm.
And it's like, "Yeah, I have a lot of stuff I could teach you, and you can't actually do the things I've taught you.
Yeah.
You think you can, you can't."
Yeah.
Like, and we can role play it right now. Like, it's like, and I know you can't. And so really just that humility, and that comes from the sports I played and the sports I coached, similar to your martial arts experience, like the humility of like, you have to master the fundamentals or everything else becomes leaky. And so that is the thing that when I see it online or see someone post about it, it really speaks true to me. And it's
Mhm.
also the same thing that drives me crazy when I'm on LinkedIn or online
Mhm.
because of all the new, like, people are just looking for nuggets, looking for
Oh, yeah.
nuggets. It's like, but
Mhm.
if it's not within a structured framework that you've mastered, then it's just going to be a distraction.
Absolutely. Yeah. The line in I mean, the crutch line that we were, or that I said earlier actually comes from Kung Fu, right? That if you give students technique before they're ready to use it because they don't have the foundational components, it becomes a crutch, right? And we would always talk about this because in the Kung Fu school, you're totally allowed to look this way at people that are at your level or lower, but you do not look this way over here. Like this is
Hmm.
where the seniors are and the people who are teaching you. And like if you were looking over there, like right? Like, oh, you got it. You got it so hard, right? Of just like,
Hmm.
focus on your own stuff. Don't even be paying attention to that. You're not ready for that and everything. And it was such part and parcel of the path and the community there. And I'm the same way. It's so funny when I talk with people and I'm like, okay, cool, let's role play this. And they're like, well, I can't do the fake stuff. Can't do the fake stuff. And I'm like, cool. If you can't role play with me, you are not running anywhere close to this framework or
Yep.
doing these things with efficiency or being poised or feeling comfortable or really even being able to hear what they're actually telling you, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's
It's like
it's
a
always
hitter
so
in
funny.
baseball saying that he hits 500, and you're like, "Great, let's hop into the batting cage. Let me see your swing." And he's like, "No, I don't hit balls off a pitching machine." And it's
Yeah,
like,
yep. It's
okay.
it,
Whatever.
there's people in martial arts who refuse to spar, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's
Yeah.
always like whenever I run into that, I don't care what discipline or style it is, but all those people who are like, well, I train and I drill, but I don't spar. Okay, cool. So you think you're good?
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
like, and you think you're good, but once
Mhm.
again, like, just like all these people on LinkedIn who are posting about sales advice that have never carried a bag, never carried a number, never actually helped anybody else get to any kind of traction in a sales role, and just
Yep.
pushing their own personal preferences. And it's just like,
Yeah.
you're causing more harm than good, you know?
Yep.
And I get so riled up about it because it's just like, this job is hard enough, right? And if you take the wrong advice from the wrong people, and everyone has weird sales dogma that they love to push because they think that that's the right answer, and it's like,
Mhm.
can't take sales advice from people that have not done the job. It just
Yep.
kind of sets you up for failure. So,
Yep. Yeah.
so going back to this thing, right? You have a lot of technique, you have a lot of knowledge to pass on and things like this around sales. If someone was starting today, right? Brand new, first hitting the scene, and they have no background in sales.
Mhm.
Chris Caldwell, the sales trainer, what is the advice you would give that first day founder? Just hung the shingle. Let's go make it happen from a sales
I
perspective.
I would say, and I actually posted about this morning, I would say to just always remember what selling is. And at its most core essence, selling is being able to present your product or service as the solution to get the individual from where they are to where they want to be in a way that makes the juice worth the squeeze, right? That will
Mm-hmm.
bring an ROI. Like, that's it. That's all sales is. Therefore, every moment you are talking about yourself, your product, or service that isn't contextualized in that specific frame, you are telling, you're convincing, and you're just marketing. Now,
Oh,
that
yeah.
doesn't mean it can never work. And that doesn't mean that you can't get them excited about it,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not actually selling. The art of selling is being able to properly frame what you do and how you do it in between the space of where they are and where they want to be in a way that will make it worth it for them to go down that journey with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say, like, if you remember that as a founder, then you can remember to properly prioritize discovery. Remember to ask them about impact. Remember to ask them how committed they are to fixing it. Like, really fully diagnosing what's going on
Mm-hmm.
and having enough reverence and respect for yourself to not talk about that stuff too early, because in the end, people don't have half of the enthusiasm about what you do as you do. And they don't care. Just like you want to talk about yourself the whole time, they want to talk about themselves the whole time. So
Yeah.
just let them do that.
My pet peeve in my but it's also my favorite thing, right? Is whenever I'm listening to a sales reps or a founder's call review and they do this thing. Now, you didn't ask about this, but this is my favorite part. So I just want to show this, like, why are you doing that? Like, it doesn't make, like, if it didn't come up in conversation, if they don't have a gap or a challenge around this thing, you're trying to get your needs met, you're trying to show off, like, it has to be contextualized or else it's just
Yep.
there for yourself. It's such a problem, right? It's got
Yeah.
to be for them, or else it is by default for you, and it's going to be
Yes.
problematic.
Yeah. If
Oh,
it's not contextualized, it's not selling. You're just talking about something.
yeah, you're just talking at them
You're
for
not
sure.
actually selling. Yeah.
Oh man, great nugget, dude. Thank you so much for that.
Sure, of course.
Last question, and then I'll let you get on with your day. You've been in the space for a while,
Mhm.
and you've seen things change, right? And where everyone's in AI and all these things and everything. For someone who's starting today, what is the advice you would give a founder with your knowledge, but also seeing where things are right now, so that way
Mhm.
they can have better hopes of getting traction sooner rather than later?
I would encourage them to always remember that the feeling of their business is their own personal feeling.
Oh,
Like, that's it. And the beautiful thing, just like you can say in a romantic relationship, just like you can say with a relationship with a child or a parent, your relationship with your business is a mirror. It's a mirror to you and what's really inside of you. The things that cause you fear, the things that cause you anxiety, the patterns that show up, like it is all pointing to something inside of you that is asking to be seen, to be dealt with, to be included, to be processed through, to be transcended. And so, like, if you can really own that your entrepreneurial journey is simultaneously as much a journey of self-discovery as you choose for it to be, then even if it, quote, fails on paper, which it might, whatever that would mean, right? Whatever,
Mm-hmm.
definition we want to give to that, it can still transform who you are. And it can
Wow.
still change the way you look at the world, the way you look at things. It can help instill different values in you. So that's what I would encourage. Like for any entrepreneur, like for any founder, if you allow it to be a mirror, like the grist in the mill, as Ram Dass would say,
Mm-hmm.
allow your business to be the thing that changes you, then even if the business doesn't work for whatever reason, like you are now changed. And now you're going back into the world, back into the job market, whatever it would be, as a different version of you because of it. Um,
Yeah.
but the odds are, if you really embrace it with that perspective and that humility, it will work out just fine.
Wow, man. I'm going to add on a question because we've talked about a couple of
Okay,
different, philosophies and lines of thinking, right, over the course of this conversation.
sure.
I'm a philosophy nut. I'm
Okay.
curious, uh, w- where would you point founders to in the name of, philosophy or, this kind of stuff that we've kind of been talking about and alluding to as a good starting point? Do you have a particular place? Is it Watts? Is it, Thich Nhat Hanh? Is there a good entrance door in your perspective?
Sure. I mean, I think stoicism is great for a founder,
Hmm.
especially with all the distraction we have in today's world. So,
Yeah.
Marcus Aurelius,
Hmm.
Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Ryan Holiday is a contemporary author
Oh yeah.
who writes about stoicism. I think that's wildly valuable. Um, Adlerian psychology is something that's been powerful for me, specifically the book, The Courage to Be Disliked.
Oh, great
That
book.
that
Phenomenal
that
book.
just that changed everything for me when I read that book, and I went down a lot of rabbit holes around Alfred Adler, and don't align with everything he says, and nor should I, because I'm not him.
Hmm.
But he has been very catalyzing for me, and so yeah, I would point people in that direction.
What's fascinating about that is that I read that book. I'm not sure how it got into my radar, but I read it and I was like, oh, this is so interesting. And I try to share books with people who were interested on it. I don't try to force it because not everyone's a reader, but a really good friend of mine who's a big I type.
Hmm.
And what I have found is that I type specifically get so much value from that book, right? Because a
Yeah,
lot of their core wiring is around being liked and being
being
the center of
liked.
attention and stuff like this. And so I was just kind of reading it, and we checked in, and I was like, "Oh, there's this interesting book," and he went and consumed it. And I mean, it was a great book for me. It was super helpful, but for him, it was, I think, as meaningful maybe as it was to you, which is a really
Yeah,
cool thing, right? And since most
yeah,
salespeople and founders are going to be way more of an I type than they are typically going to be a C type,
yes.
I love that as a recommendation. Thank you so much for putting that out there. That's awesome.
Sure, of course. Yeah, man.
Where should people come hang out with you? If they want to learn more about you, if they would just want to see your content, if they kind of want to see just where you're going, where would you point people?
Sure. LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the channel I'm on the most.
Okay.
There are a lot of Chris Caldwells out there. I'm the one in Annapolis, Maryland, who runs Sell As You Are. So it's, LinkedIn. They can check out my website, sellasyoure.com. But that's where I would encourage people to find me, connect with me, shoot me a DM, follow me for, more insights and perspective.
Awesome. Chris, this was everything I was hoping it was going to be. I really appreciate you coming in
Of
here.
course, man.
And I get to talk about sales a lot. I don't normally get to talk about it at this level, and I
Mm,
really do think that this is going to help some people, especially if they don't come from sales backgrounds, right? Because
yeah.
most people are holding it a little bit badly.
Yep.
So I really
I would agree.
appreciate the depth, man. This is really, really cool, and I think it's going to help some people, and really appreciate it. Thank you so much for
Of
coming on.
course. Absolutely. You too, man.
Absolutely,
Thanks for having me.
you're more than welcome. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good.